Okay. Well, I want to just share a little bit more from the first century Aramaic Beatitudes. And as I said, the kind of mini intensive that I've been doing, it really kind of started on a new level, the energy flow with the thing I did for Avison, and then I've done several different interviews and presentations on top of what we normally do, and it's all just kind of come together for me this morning on a new level of insight in the Beatitudes. And so I want to talk a little bit more about those in terms of application. And, you know, the world tends to teach us that the Beatitudes are some kind of a nice philosophy, but actually just exactly like what they call the Lord's Prayer, it's not a prayer. The Beatitudes are not a nice philosophy. They're a set of instructions. They're a way to achieve a space that's different than what the culture has taught us. And so when we take the first word in each of the Beatitudes, the Greeks translate it as blessed are they. So we hear this, we read this, blessed are they, blessed are they, blessed are they, blessed are they, blessed are they. But in Aramaic, there's nothing that even resembles that. What it speaks of is that there is an internal guidance system. Literally, in Aramaic, the first part of that word, Touveyhoun, it's a three-part word. The first part is the word tuv, which means attitude of mind. And what he speaks is that there's this attitude of mind that part of our internal, eternal design. And that part is meant to be active, kind of like a GPS, guiding us all the time, and literally being at the root of the output of the perceptual mind. If someone lives in a state of hostility, then the root of the output of their minds perceptually, everything they look at is going to be threatening. If they're in a state of, if they're in a state of fear, everything they look at, because of that neural structure that underlies perception at that moment, everything they look at in fear is going to be threatening. When the hostility is active, everything they look at is going to be irritating. And what Yeshua was conveying 2,000 years ago, and you know, there's no in-between understanding of this. You can't go to the Greek translations. You can't go to the Latin translations and find this, because the comprehension, the language, the verbiage, the very brain cells for that level of understanding just don't exist. There are no words in the English language. So you know, to describe this one word, Touveyhoun, takes a paragraph. So if we were to open up this idea, and actually I looked up after this, you know, this morning, my guidance in waking up was to go to a new level. You know, you've heard me many times say, cultivate your relationship with love, cultivate your relationship with love. But hand in hand with that, what I got this morning as guidance was that you want to spend time each morning cultivating your relationship with this tuv that aligns with love, that was put in us by the Creator, and because of our hostile, fearful, busy, you know, traumatized world, we tend to put that aside. And that makes it more difficult for the mind to construct perceptions that bring us closer to our true state of origin and our true state of being. So, you know, a simple long form of this idea of Touveyhoun, it's a three-part word, but each beatitude would have this introduction, this word before it that says, a latent neural structure implanted by God to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession, you who, and then each of the Beatitudes is a set of instructions. And so I've looked to several different translations and thought it would be appropriate to share. And Dale Allen Hoffman, working with the Aramaic, takes that word Touveyhoun, and the way he presents it is that divinely attuned and consciously ripe in this present moment. So being in alignment with love, divinely attuned, and then remember that word sin in Aramaic, we've said, means unripened. And that it's got nothing to do with the whole Greek idea of sin, but just that when there are two different aspects to it. One is it's an archery term that means off the mark, and the other one means ripe or in alignment, or the sin aspect being out of alignment. And so Dale is taking this word Touveyhoun and tying it into that, and so divinely attuned and consciously ripe in this present moment is what comes forward from Dale Allen Hoffman on that word Touveyhoun. And so I just want to kind of briefly go through. We did a whole week on the Beatitudes not too long ago, but for me it's kind of just coming to a new tweak, a new perspective on this. So the first Beatitude, first instruction, when you listen to the Greek, it makes no sense whatsoever. What it says is, blessed are the poor, the traditional translation, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It's like, in what universe does that make sense? Now, here comes this man, Yeshua, who says, I come to connect you to the spirit of truth. And now somebody says you're supposed to be poor in spirit to get there. It just makes, it doesn't make any sense. And the reason for that is because in the Aramaic language, you'll remember they've said that, nobody would change one jot or tittle. They're the smallest characters in the Aramaic alphabet. And one of those characters would look like a fly speck on a piece of paper. And in the Aramaic, the word that's been translated by the Greeks as poor is actually home. This is one of the ways we know the Aramaic came first, because there's the accurate translation. It's your home in the eternal forces from God. Rather than being poor, the fly speck on the piece of paper changes word home to poor. So we want to have our home in the eternal forces for God, and then what that shakes out as, the result of that is that you'll live in a heavenly estate. And remember, that word heaven isn't about someplace off in space somewhere. In Aramaic, it translates as the community of love. For yours is, you're going to be living in this community of love. And then Yam, another translator of the Aramaic, his translation for that is, now is the right time to make your home in the breathing unity. The fertile soil of the queendom will birth your clear guidance. So you can hear how Yehem shifts that just a little bit. He's tying into the breath, which of course also goes back to this elemental force within us, Ruka Dekudsha, she who undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. And if that condition is met, then we're going to have a clear guidance system. And everything is going to tend to fall into place. Starting out with this neural structure active. How do you do it? You breathe. You have to get this guidance system into activity. Dale Allen Hoffman translates that one as attuned and consciously ripe in this present moment are those who have their true home in the emptiness of breath, spirit, and eternal forces from Allah, for they shall realize the blissfully empowering presence of life itself. So that's Dale Allen Hoffman's translation for that first beatitude. And once again, from the perspective of the Kabbalist manuscript, it comes out as, you who have a home in the eternal or active forces from the Creator, yours is a heavenly estate. And so that's the first result that's going to come, or that's the first set of instructions. Make sure that rather than being in your perception, being in your mind, remember we've said 1,000 times, in order to heal, you've got to be out of your mind. How do you get out of your mind? Forgiveness is how you collapse the perceptual constructs of the mind. And then you are living in, you are guided by, you hear, you feel the impact of these eternal forces that move through you. The next beatitude, according to the Greeks, is, blessed are they who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Now, Touveyhoun translates that a little differently from the Aramaic. He says, restored are they who allow their inner pain to surface, the place where love carries them to greater wholeness. So, am I willing to look inside of me? Touveyhoun's saying here, I need to look inside of me. I need to be able to let go of the drug of busyness, to stop running around all the time, doing, and allow myself to look and allow this internal dynamic, this internal energy that needs to surface. And as I'm willing to do that, that's going to carry me to greater wholeness. That particular beatitude, Dale Allen Hoffman describes as divinely attuned and consciously ripe in this present moment are those with absolute willingness to experience and process through their intense emotional turmoil, confusion, and suffering. They shall be freed from suffering as the root causes of their inner divisions return to wholeness. So, we've talked over and over again about the fact that the Aramaic forgiveness process creates a pathway into the unconscious part of the mind. And when you realize that the reason we have an unconscious mind is because there's something in there that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to feel, that we don't want to deal with. And so part of making this underlying neural structure that the Creator planted us from the beginning active, having it just below the surface of the mind all the time, is to move the garbage out of the way that generations and generations have refused to deal with, have refused to look at. And so if you look at the Kabbalist translation of those from our Beatitudes poster, Touveyhoun, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being, becomes your conscious possession, you who honor truth and profess your errors and the errors of your society. Now, most people have no care whatsoever for truth. If they're enraged and their mind's projecting and they're going to puke on somebody else, you made me mad, you made me sad, you made me afraid. No interest whatsoever in honoring truth, willing to do the greatest puke possible and make it everybody else's fault. Even when they realize they've been through it. They've been doing it for decades and decades and decades, and they're still blaming somebody else for it. So this particular beatitude requires, if you want to activate this precious neural structure that was put inside of you to guide you to happiness and well-being, you not only have to profess your own errors, but the errors of your society. And what it says is, in Aramaic, if you do that, you'll be freed of mental stress. And when you're freed of mental stress, it's like you've cleared this layer of gunk out of the unconscious that keeps this original neural structure hidden from you. Keeps it covered up. Remember, on a conscious level, there's only room for 9 bits of data. You remember that Harvard research that says that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of data that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. And if we refuse to own, go back to earliest relationships, early childhood, and look at the dramas and traumas, and people who are unwilling to open those spaces in themselves, unwilling to honor truth and be responsible for them, are always puking on everybody else and telling everybody else how it's their fault for how they're feeling, and never once stop and go, I've been through this feeling 87 different times with 42 different people. And I'm still blaming and raging at everybody else. You've got to stand in willingness to tell the truth to yourself if you're ever going to change the game. So again, your jam. Restored are they who allow their inner pain to surface. They shall touch the place carries them to greater wholeness. Dale speaks of those whose absolute willingness to experience and process through intense emotional turmoil, confusion, and suffering. They shall be freed from suffering as the root causes of their inner divisions. Return to wholeness. And am I willing to honor truth? Profess my errors, the errors of my society. Am I willing to be freed of mental stress? To let loose of that one. The next beatitude, the next instruction set for how do I get this neural structure that was put in me right from the beginning to guide me to happiness and well-being. Historically, the Greeks translate the next one as, blessed are they mourning their wrongs, for they will be comforted. It's not about sitting around mourning your wrongs. That's the historical interpretation of this one that's about honoring truth. It's not mourning your wrongs, it's honoring the truth. Yes, there are errors to be owned, but it's not about sitting around crying over spilt milk and look at your errors, but rather honoring truth and being able to look at those places that have been hidden. And then it's not just that there'll be comfort, but literally there'll be the release of the energy of mental stress. It's phenomenal. The next one, classically, according to the King James, is, and again, remember, each of these is an instruction for how to activate this tuv in Aramaic that the Creator put into us to guide us, literally, to carry us to happiness and well-being. So, again, the Greek misinterpretation, blessed are they. Again, there's no such idea as blessed in there. It's Touveyhoun, a latent neural structure. Latent meaning it's hiding under the surface. It's out of view. Becomes your conscious possession, you who. And it's not about being meek. It's not about inheriting the earth in the sense of possession of something. So Yehem translates that from the Aramaic as, having made soft what was rigid within, a new ripeness shall bring a renewed inspiration, and confident strength will flow through them. That's how Yehem renders that particular beatitude, that particular instruction set for activating this neural structure that we're designed to have active and guiding our lives. Dale Allen Hoffman translates that one as, divinely attuned and consciously ripe in this present moment are those who allow their inner structures of comfort in relation to others and self to melt back into the empty potential of the nothingness. For they shall realize their oneness within, infinite diversity of creation. So kind of looking at the release of ideas of separateness here and coming back to the truth of who one is. From the Kabbalist manuscript and my translation, or my rendition of it, a latent neurostructure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being becomes your conscious possession, you who have humility. The Greeks have taught us that humility is about groveling in the earth like a worm. And that's not what it is. Humility in Aramaic is a mental quality, and it's the quality of being able to perceive and cooperate with the good desires of others. Am I able to see beyond my own projections and recognize that everyone has good desires, and that when I do that, because of the fact that we live in a world that is based in cooperation of the most cooperative, it's interesting if you go back and read, what's his name, the whole evolutionary game, and he talks about survival of the fittest, and yet he talks about love over and over and over again, and that's hardly ever mentioned. It's all about fight and strife and the fittest, but really that's not the truth. The most cooperative. And so when we have this ability to look for the highest and best in others, the mental quality of perceiving and cooperating with those good desires, then because we are unified in our search for well-being, for wellness, for wholeness, for wealth even, cooperation is going to bring that. And so the Greeks, again, translate that generally speaking as blessed are the meek, like if you lay around, you just put your head down, let everybody walk on you, then everything will be cool. And it's not even close. But it's certainly something that a lot of people who want to control others would invite others to do. The next, according to the King James, is translated, is blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Excuse me for just 1 minute, making a note. So blessed are the Greeks, again, it's blessed are those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. And they almost make it like, this idea of righteous, they've attached it to words like indignation and anger. And it is not a state of the activity of some sort of anything that would resemble righteousness and winning, for they shall be filled. Yeham, as opposed to that kind of, what generally from the Greek would seem to be action, you're hungering and thirsting for this, his translation offers that it's resting in a deeper longing. And when we rest in this deep longing, this space where we're willing to have this connectedness happen, then the power of Ruka de Kudsha will move them in the direction of true fulfillment. In other words, you're going to have a guidance system, and the guidance system is going to inform you as exactly where to go to bring about fulfillment of those deeper longings, not about, hungering and thirsting after being right, being on top of others, that whole sort of righteous game, longing for the truth of our being to be experienced. And when we rest in that, when we breathe and rest in that, when we let go of stress, when we get out of sympathetic dominance, get out of the fear, fright, flight, freeze mode, then there's an underlying power in you that is going to carry you in the direction of fulfillment. Dale Allen Hoffman translates that one as, divinely attuned, and consciously ripe in this present moment. And for me, that would translate, divinely attuned, that we're in alignment with our spirit nature, with the true nature of love in us, and consciously ripe, that we're in a receptive space in this present moment. And his translation of the hunger and thirst is to selflessly regard and act on behalf of all concerned, equally, fairly, and as one unified life. It's not, as the Greek translation would imply, that it's about winning, again, being in that righteous space, but that the truth is, energetically, when we realize that everything is energy, that we're unified, that there's one life, and that we work for the good of that one life, no matter what individual fulfillment would look like. So it's fulfilling this state of, according to Dale, of this oneness that flows to us, being attuned to that and being able to listen to it. And from the Kabbalah, according to the poster we publish, there's still a different take here, and that is that you who hunger, and we leave the Aramaic word kinuta there, and what one wants to have is the mind structure that underlies the judgment and behavior, the attitude that's described as just and fair behavior between people, to be active. So it has to do with just and fair behavior in the context of this oneness, rather than righteousness, oneness. And recognizing that in order for the mind to construct perception, remembering that the whole world you see, when you look through you think you're looking through your eyes. You're not looking through your eyes, you're looking through your brain. Your eye brings information in you don't see outside with your eye. Your brain structures the world that you see. And so what this beatitude is actually saying is that there's a mind structure that, when it's active, will bring forward behaviors, attitudes, judgments. All aspects of it will be what's just and fair between people. And what it says is, if you do that, if you have that active, then you're going to receive it. As you give it, you're going to receive it. There's a story about the guru who's in the middle of the river, and a student comes out and says, I teach me how to want God. Teach me. And the master grabs him by the head of the hair and stuffs him under the water and holds him there. And this guy's struggling and kicking and trying to get up, and he holds him until the guy's almost drowned, and he finally pulls himself up. And the student's like, why did you do that to me? He said, you wanted to know how deeply you were going to have to want it to have it. There it is. So it kind of fits here, that rather than self-interest, to really, truly have this neural structure active from every aspect is going to bring us into what is just and fair between people. And what Yeshua says is, you're going to attain it, you're going to receive it. Now again, the Greeks translated that one as, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Just doesn't cut it. And then the next beatitude, according to the King James, speaks of, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Touveyhoun, from the Aramaic, says, stored in union with radiant love, it shall begin to extend from their own heart center. So this beatitude is according to Touveyhoun, is about reconnecting to active present love as your truth and coming from the very deepest parts. Allow it to extend from there to your own heart center. And, to me that would also include the linking up. There's a recognition, that the brain is where the mind operates, but they've also recognized that there's a mind in operation within our hearts. And when we link those two up, and a simple act of placing your hand on your heart and imagining that the intelligence, the wisdom, the compassion, the genius through the brain in your heart is linked to the one that operates in your head. The one in your head has computer genius. But if we don't have the two operating, and this is where that union has to be restored. If we don't have the two operating, if we're just working with the brain and the head, it is a monumental cipher device. It decodes, it's genius. But if it doesn't have the wisdom behind it, then it only has intelligence. And, if you hand to someone intelligence that says, how do we win this war with their intelligence, they'll make the weapons of mass destruction. If you handed that same question to someone with the heart brain operating and linked, they'd look at why and how there is war and why and how we're going to bring about healing. So Touveyhoun really clicks this one right on the head. With restored in union with radiant love, it shall begin to express or extend from their own heart centers, and by so doing, blessing everything in the creation, blessing everyone within the creation. Dale Allen Hoffman, his translation of the word Touveyhoun, divinely attuned and consciously ripe in this present moment, are those who birth their love for others. I'm a little in disagreement here with this love for others, because remembering that love is a state of being, it's not a state of doing, it's not something we can do. But for me it would be more the birthing of the truth of who we are as love, of self and life from the inside. He speaks here from the spiritual womb, which would tie back in, I think, with the AM's idea of bringing the brain of the heart into activity. For they shall have all-embracing love, which flows from the center point of true being. So each of these, I would offer, is necessary for experiencing the activation of something that is so far beyond comprehension in our intellectually oriented world, in our Greek, our being steeped in Greek philosophy, Greek mythology, the seduction of sophistry. So this particular beatitude from the Kabbalists and from the poster we published with my interpretation, Touveyhoun, once again, a latent neural structure. And this is the whole reason for going through each of these. Each of these is an instruction for how to activate this underlying neural structure within us, so that it's at the root of our perception, our decisions, and behaviors. So this one would be that you who have Rachma, and we've talked a lot about Rachma over the years, and that is this filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that brings human life, pure being, pure love into our human forms, and that presence of love, that state of being, is so powerfully embodied that it covers everything. It encompasses all judgment and behavior. And that when that is active in us, then by offering it, that's how we're going to receive it. So again, it's not the Greek translation of blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy, but really, truly discovering, realizing, experiencing yourself as love, and that love encompasses judgment and behavior. So it covers everything, and that when that happens, energetically, you're going to set that up and receive the same. And then the next beatitude, according to the Greeks, speaks about being pure of heart, for they shall see God. Yehem translates that from the Aramaic as, wise are they who are consistently restored in this way. Like flashes of lightning, the Creator will increasingly reveal itself in the depths of their soul. So there are going to be insights, there are going to be connection points that will not be rational, that will not be intellectual, and that's how I would interpret or understand him speaking of the flashes of lightning, that there are going to be insights that come, there are going to be moments of enlightenment that will open, and there will be deeper and deeper relationship with and comprehension of the Creator. And that will be experienced in the very depths of their own beingness. Dale Allen Hoffman, he interprets Touveyhoun, divinely attuned and consciously ripe in this present moment, are those who embody absolute clarity and purified perception to recognize the single nature of life, for they realize their oneness within. And we've talked about this idea of purified perception. You know, as long as we hold hostility or fear, our perceptual constructs are going to be colored by that hostility or fear. We're going to be, as Paul spoke about, we'll see as though through a glass darkly. As you begin to clean that up, then the only data that is in your perceptual system is accurate data. And so when your mind constructs a perception about something, even though it's not the thing itself, you know, it's not the actuality of the thing that we're experiencing when we're experiencing it through perception. It's not the direct experience, it's an indirect experience, but at least with corrected perception, everything is in alignment with the truth. You still can't get the actuality through that perception, but at least there's no error in it. You're a whole lot closer to the truth of it. And what what Dale translates that as, resulting in, is that they'll realize their own oneness within the Creator, the absolute and only being, according to Dale. And in Aramaic, the word is Allah. That's the word that Yeshua used for the Creator. So once we clean this mind up, this perceptual mind, now there's another level than just corrected perception. And we've talked about this a little bit before, and that when we're willing to simply collapse what carbon-based memory has to say out of its structure about the actuality in the moment, when we're freed of that, then enlightened perception means that the actuality, the truth, what is, writes its meanings in us. And that's when we come into real union and connectedness with the Creator. So once again, this beatitude from the poster that we publish on The Beatitudes, Touveyhoun, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being, will be your conscious possession, you who have a completely purified mind. In other words, you've cleaned up all the hostility or fear. Hostility or fear couldn't come up in you because it's not in you anymore. And most of the world, of course, remember, talks about how their hostility or fear is caused by Bill or Harry or Mary or Hortense. They made me angry, they made me sad, they made me afraid. When you really step in and do your work, then you've got a purified mind. And it is free of error. Being free of error, it no longer distorts your experience of life or of the Creator. And so once one has this purified mind, then according to the interpretation that I've done, it's that you will comprehend the Creator. You'll comprehend this invisible source of creation. And we are designed to have that comprehension, I would offer. So the historical Greek interpretation, blessed are they, Touveyhoun, who are pure in heart. When you realize that that word heart means the unconscious, when you cleaned up your unconscious and you removed what doesn't belong, then a whole other level of experience happens, and your mind is able to, the mind, because it no longer has error in it, supports you in your direct experience of the actuality, which includes the direct experience of the Creator. Then the last beatitude we're going to talk about, the seventh. In the King James, it's translated as, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Yehem, from the Aramaic, interprets that as ripening in new wholeness. They shall become as channels for a new creation. So when we step into this state, when we're willing to be a channel for something that's never been, when we're willing to be receptive, we're not stuck in the perceptual constructs in the mind of the past, but we're open. You know, there's an interesting story about he's got an estate still down in Florida in Fort Myers. I was talking to someone about him this morning. Edison. Edison is said to get his ideas. He explained to people where he got his inventions, where he got his new ideas. And if you go down and see his laboratory, which is still there down near Fort Myers, along with the Edison and the Ford estate are now linked. They're actually one. When I first started going there, they were two separate. But there's actually still a cot in the laboratory where Edison said when he ran out of ideas and he was working on invention, he'd go lay down, he'd breathe, he'd hold an iron ball in his hand, and he'd allow himself to go to sleep. And when he got to the relaxed state that his arm wilted and the iron ball fell on the floor, bingo, he was at that level of mind. He developed that as a way to bring in new inventions, to bring something new in. And so that's exactly what he was doing. And as Yehem presents this one, shall be channels for new creations, serving the same as for the restoration in others. So when one steps into that space, something that's never been seen before shows up, and we're down to the last minute or so. So I'm going to quickly move through what Dale says. And he says that this one translates as, those who birth peace from the center point of their true being, they shall become conscious, creative vessels of the Creator, the absolute and only being. And in the Aramaic, there's an element in my understanding of these the words here. The word is abde. The abde is You who through service work effectively to produce the peace and understanding under and in accord with the Creator's will. When you do that, you will activate this north structure. It will be yours, and it will be yours for eternity. And when you do that, you'll be called the offspring or the children of the Creator. And that's what we're designed for. And when we step into that role, the underlying guidance system that was put into us becomes ours for the whole of our